today we've brought a man who is very passionate about coffee, who is going to be talking about how he got started and how he turned what was essentially sort of just some random happenings to a hobby into a fairly nice little business. Brian Kannekens is originally from Lethbridge, moved here a number of years ago, and now roasts coffee for a living. So let's welcome Brian, and again, thanks for coming.
Thanks, John. It's great to have a chance to be here and talk about coffee and a small business. When we moved here from Lethbridge 14 or 15 years ago, my wife had a teaching job, and so I was at home, and the business idea hadn't quite evolved yet, but we were settling, getting ready to raise a family, and at that point had met a couple of people here in town. Strangely enough, one of them is sitting in this room from a number of years ago, but I'll show you a picture of him in a few minutes. We connected with a guy named Harold Cooper, who was with Athletes in Action, which is a sports ministry that travels around the world and has an opportunity to meet people and travel. And we connected with Harold and went on a trip to Africa. And we were fortunate enough to be in when you land in the Kenya, in the Nairobi airport, that's one of the signs you see when you land. And so when we landed, we knew there was someone there to meet us. We hadn't met him before. We hoped that the sign that he was holding up was going to be our names and he was the real guy. But we landed in Kenya and we started to tour the country. We got a chance to go to Zambia and meet some staff there. And what we discovered over the course of our time in those two countries was the people who were on staff were considered missionaries, so they had to raise all of their support every month for all of their expenses. So if you're familiar with any missionaries who've ever traveled, you may have read a letter that says, you know, I have to raise X amount of dollars to go on this missions trip, or kids may have done it. And so we met these guys, and they were on staff, but they had no salary. And they had to raise all of their support every month for their families, their kids, their groceries, all of their expenses. And one of the guys had 7 of his own kids. And as is African tradition, when someone in your family dies, you inherit their children. So he actually had 4 other kids of his brothers and sisters, so 11 kids plus he and his wife in a 4-bedroom house, and working on full-time, but having to raise their monthly support and their salary. So on our return trip, we came back through Nairobi, and we were sitting in a little guest house with one of the guys there, and started talking about their support and what could we do to help you out? Where could we go with an idea that we might be able to provide some support for you? And we threw around some ideas and different things. And what we came up with was his father-in-law worked in the coffee business in Kenya. And so, okay, coffee, great. Lots of people drink coffee. At that point, I had no idea how many billions of people drink coffee around the world, but lots of people do. How many people here are coffee drinkers? Regular coffee drinkers, okay? I got some questions for you as we go along and some goodies to give away, so you'll have to pay attention and see if you know the answers. But we met with David, and so there were 4 of us. We were 4 hours away from our flight out of Nairobi coming home, and it was like, okay, we've got an idea. So we sat on a plane for 8 hours and took some notes, and we sat in the Heathrow airport for another 12 hours on our layover and talked some more and slept a little. We got on our last leg and came home, and from there, 3 of us who lived here in Medicine Hat, on a weekly basis, we're getting together, sat around my kitchen table, and basically came up with the idea to start a coffee roasting company. Oddly enough, none of us had any clue what that entailed, but I was not working, we had kids at home, and I was willing to say, hey, I think this is a great idea to do this. And so over the course of the next year, I spent the time researching green coffee, researching roasting coffee, researching roasters, learning how to run a home-based business and the benefits that go along with that. One morning, by purely dumb luck, happenstance, or fate, whatever you want to call it, the name Bean There Roasting evolved, and it's spelled B-E-A-N, like a coffee bean. Because we had traveled a little bit, we thought that was an appropriate name for our business. And I say our business because I always give those 2 guys a little bit of credit that they had part of it. So what we had to do then was we started planning what was it going to take to do this as a home-based business. First thing we realized was we needed to gut and renovate my basement. Not many of you here lived in the 70s. A few of you did. Basically, if you had stuck a disco ball and thrown the Bee Gees on in my basement, you could have gone back into the 70s and had a great time. It was a dark cave with stalactites off the ceiling about that big and about that fat, and it was like a disco hall extraordinaire. Orange shag carpet with a wet bar, carpeted, big honking mirror behind it, and the plastic front railing that you could lean on when you'd had one too many. And so we had to obviously change that because we could never run a business down there. And so that was one of the first things that we had to plan for in terms of planning the business. Now, again, we had no idea what roasting involved, how to buy green beans. We drank a lot of coffee as a group, but really didn't have any sort of idea about getting into the business aspect of it. But from there, as we talked and got together, the ideas started to come together. Went to the city to look at getting a business license, went to the health department because I knew that was going to be something that would have to be looked into. And slowly over the course of that year of reading, researching, you can actually roast coffee in a popcorn popper. It has to be the right style of popcorn popper. It has to be one that pulls air in from the bottom, not from the top. And I started roasting coffee in my garage. Threw it in the popcorn popper, fired it up, threw the coffee in, and roasted away. One thing I've learned over the course of that time is coffee in a popcorn popper goes from nice and brown to black to on fire really quickly. And it's one of those things you encounter and you can only experience by doing it. Whereas if you have a dedicated coffee roaster, they're designed so that the coffee doesn't quite turn that quickly. So we were renovating our basement, applying for all of the stuff we needed for the house. We had invested in what I will call our first roaster. And that's it right there. It's called a Cafe Roasto. It roasts 3 ounces of green beans, which when you roast coffee, it's kind of like popcorn. You gain volume but lose weight. So I finished up with a little more than 2 ounces of coffee in here, and that's enough to make 1 pot. And this is where the business started. Out in my garage, roasting, because we didn't quite have the facilities in place yet. And coffee roasting does make a lot of smoke. And so we started with this roaster in our garage, and basically I recruited a few friends to be guinea pigs to try the finished product. And what we discovered was the finished product was far superior to what most of the people who were our friends were buying off the shelf. Now, at this point, Starbucks was sort of big. Certainly not what they are now. Tim Hortons has been a Canadian icon for years. So we knew that we were in sort of a market that was going to be tough to compete in. So we had to come up with something that was unique for us as a business that would help us stand out. And so that's where the idea of roasted fresh and delivered to your door came to be part of the whole equation. So what we do now is customers phone and order coffee from us. We roast it fresh, and then I deliver it. So my role within the company, owner, operator, roaster, shipper, packing supervisor, because I have 3 kids now who can help me pack. They're old enough. I teach them how to wash their hands, and I bring them down. And I was telling John, this is my busiest weekend of the year, this tomorrow and Saturday. And in the course of a half hour with my 3 kids, we bagged 200 2-ounce stocking stuffer bags. And I could never do that in a half hour. I could get about 50 done. So having my kids now, I can be the packing supervisor. I'm also our official receiver, although now that my kids are getting older, they also can manage a 150-pound bag of coffee. And when we first started, we were buying coffee in bags that would have been about this size, so 15 kilos. The coffee world deals in metric, so that's about 32 pounds. All right, if you want to take a look at that, I'll pass it around. And we do carry a coffee from Cuba that we have imported. So when we started, I was roasting in a 2-ounce roaster or a 3-ounce roaster, buying 15 kilos of coffee, and discovering that over the course of the first month, my little roaster was not going to be able to keep up, because my friends who were all drinking fantastically fresh roasted coffee and having it delivered to their door were telling all their friends, and they were phoning, which is how business is supposed to go. Right? You come up with a plan, you come up with an idea, you, as the field of dreams, build it and they will come. Well, we built it and they're buying. And so we discovered within the first month that we needed to move up to a different roaster. And I have some pictures as we've of some of the roasters we've gone through that I'll show. So within a month, we moved from a 3-ounce roaster to a 9-ounce roaster. and business was growing. One of the things that for me was very, very important was that I was dealing face-to-face with my customers, interacting with them, talking to them about coffee. And as much as I was teaching them about coffee, I was also learning about it at the same time. And so that was one of the things that was great for me, was a chance to drink something that I love and teach people about it, and at the same time learn myself. And so we had a chance to do that. And then so we ordered a 9-ounce roaster. So it took 2 roasts now instead of 8 to make a pound, which was great. Except that our business was growing incrementally faster than my 9-ounce roaster could keep up with. Within 3.5 months, we discovered we needed another bigger roaster. So our options were, one, we could have bought another 9-ounce roaster, which would have been effective. But I spent some time then researching online. Number one, it had to be an electric roaster because I could not get a permit from the city to roast with a gas roaster in my basement. They simply were not big fans of that. So it had to be electric. And I found a company in Toronto that had a variety of roasters. One of them was called the IMEX. It was a 3.5-pound roaster, and it ran on power. Perfect. Got the wiring fixed, ordered the roaster, and we went from a $800 roaster, which was the 9-ounce called the Hot Top, to a $6,000 roaster that worked with halogen bulb, and it had a computer system, and it was programmed, and you could set it, and you could achieve a perfect roast every time. It was great. So it arrived, and actually it arrived damaged, and so I had to send it back. So we had another 3-week lag time between getting the original roaster and actually getting the new one and having it up and running. So I spent another 3 weeks with very little sleep roasting in a 9-ounce roaster because word was spreading, and people were trying it, and they were experiencing a unique product delivered to their door. All right? It was something that was quite unique to them. So we've talked about coffee. Here's my first question. Does anyone have any idea where coffee is believed to have been discovered?
Colombia.
No. No. Think Africa. Hey, somebody just said it. All right, you said I didn't bring any. There you go. All right, so coffee is actually believed to have been discovered originated in Ethiopia. Now, as I've researched and learned about coffee, I've also discovered that coffee is a highly, highly sought after commodity. Does anyone know what the top 5 traded commodities in the world are? What's number 1? No. Another one of those drugs. Someone just said. Okay, oils, number 1. What's number 2? Coal? Gold? No, there's actually one in between. No. Hey, coffee. Coffee is actually the number 2 traded commodity on the stock market today. It's a $1 billion business worldwide. It's estimated that around the world about 67 billion cups of coffee are consumed every year. Most of it in the United States. And one of the things that happened over the course of the history of coffee is it went from being a specialty product to a mass-produced, ground into a fine powder, packaged in a jar with a pile of additives and preservatives. Some of you may not be familiar with instant coffee, but that was where coffee went from a specialty product to a mass-produced, horrible, horrible product. And it killed the coffee industry. Prices plummeted, and coffee growers then began burning their plants and planting other crops in order to survive. And so the market I deal in when I buy coffee, so the bag of Cuban has made its way around. I won't pass this one around because if you're wearing anything that it could stick to, it will. But these are the burlap sacks. They're 70 kilos, which is roughly 150 or 132-pound bags. This is what I now receive our coffee in. So within a year, actually, we had to order coffee in this size of bag. And I will get 5 or 6 or 7 bags transported out from Montreal at a time. It lands on my doorstep. Well, it gets carried up by a grumpy trucker to my doorstep because he has to pull a pallet full of coffee. And then my kids and I load it down into the basement where the roasting room is. And so we go through, I order about 2 or 3 times a year, and usually 6 or 7 or 8 bags on each pallet. So at 150 times 8 is 1,200 pounds. So we are doing about between 3,600 and 4,000 pounds of coffee a year of green. All right, that's where we're now at over the course of the business growing. So it was the first sort of, for us, the first kind of defining factor was the delivery concept. Okay, that was what made us unique. The second thing that happened that for us that really made it real was when I started gutting our basement. Right? When we started taking apart my house, we knew this was going to happen. Okay, so when you talk about steps along the way, about things that have to get done, we knew that when that was happening, it was time. Right? This little idea that we talked about at a guest house in Nairobi was now taking shape. Right? And we took a bit of a risk. We didn't have any investors at that time. We still don't. But I wasn't working. I was at home with my kids. And I had babysat a couple other kids and had learned a few intricacies within the tax system that are highly beneficial to small business owners operating out of their house. There's a ton of write-offs you can attach to your home business that you may not know of. Like if you babysit someone's kids, you can write off all the Christmas presents you bought for your own kids if they play with them. I'm sitting with my accountant going, what? She says, yeah, bring me all your receipts for all your kids' Christmas presents. Because if you're babysitting kids and they're playing with them, it's a write-off. It's part of your business. Perfect. Okay? $1,000 worth of Christmas presents for my kids every year, just for the tax write-offs. Although my wife reminds me, in order to get $1,000 worth of write-offs, you have to spend a lot more. And so that idea didn't last very long. But I knew this was going to happen with our home-based business as well. So there was risks. And in your first year of business, and this may have changed because I'm done my first year now, you can actually take a loss on your business, and it really is helpful to your taxes. Tremendously helpful. All right? So if you're looking and you're going, well, it's going to cost us a lot, if you have the ability to provide some of the input cash yourself, which we fortunately could, all right, there are tremendous benefits that will apply to that as your business grows. All right? Now, I talked about the U.S. is the single largest consumer of coffee. Any guesses which European country is the single largest consumer of coffee per capita? I got a bag full of these that I'm not taking home, so there's lots of questions. Switzerland, close. Keep guessing. It does end in land, and none of you have hit it yet. Someone said it. Finland, there we go. Apparently the Finns love their coffee. So they're the largest coffee consumer per capita in the world. All right? One of the things that, when we talked about the guys who helped out, I'm just going to flip through a couple of pictures here. This is me, much younger, less gray hair. This is Harold Cooper, the guy I talked about at the beginning. This is a roaster at a coffee farm in Zambia that we have had a chance to visit. And so Harold was one of those guys who sat around the table, came up with the concept, helped to birth it, came up with the idea. Now, this guy, and I only had this picture because I knew he was going to be here today to hopefully not heckle too badly. We were visiting an orphanage, and for those of you who know who Steve Jobs is, you may not recognize it. It says Apple IIe. Now, that computer is twice as old as a lot of you in this room. Okay, that is one of the original Apple computers. Jace was with us on that trip and is also one of the guys who helped create the company, but because he's into retro kind of things, he had a chance to sit at an Apple IIe because I don't know that you could find it anywhere. I remember using them in high school. So this is the coffee farm in Zambia as we're traveling down the road. One of the nice benefits about having started this business and creating a contact with a coffee farm in Zambia is you get to travel the country and see amazing things. And so this is the coffee farm on the way to the farm, and this is the name of the farm. I have some Zambian coffee that we have brought back, and I only roast it for use at my house. I don't sell it because it's a very, very limited stock. All right. One of the other things that happened while we were there, and I'm reminded that the business started in Africa. We were on one of our trips doing some work, and I ran into a young gentleman, and he was wrapping that ball that I've passed around. And that would be the high-end version of a FIBA soccer ball in Africa. He was at an orphanage, was working on it, and I had been looking for one of those the entire time we'd been there. Because you see kids play with them, there's plastic everywhere, and so this is one of the things they did as a recycling tool. The kids made soccer balls. So I asked him how much it was, and he said about 1,500 kwacha, which is like 10 cents. And I asked one of the ladies, how long does it take him to make it? And she said 2 hours. So I didn't think 1,500 kwacha was very fair. I paid him a little bit more, and I asked if he could make 6 more, and she said, well, we don't really want it to turn into something that he will use to make money. He usually just makes it for the friends and the kids at the orphanage. But the ball reminds me that we started in Africa. The company started there. That's where the ideas were birthed, and so I keep that. My wife actually took it to school and thought to show her kids, and she thought she had lost it. She actually thought one of her kids had taken it from one of her classes and they had gone outside with it. And I don't often get too upset about stuff, but that was the one thing that I got upset about, was my missing soccer ball. And so that was one of those things that reminds me where we went from, where we got to, and where we are now. And one of the things that for me has been tremendously helpful with working in a small business environment and something that I love is roasting coffee and bringing coffee to people and talking with them is really fun. Like, it is tremendously fun for me to be out doing what I do. And I also referee basketball. How many of you have been to the college basketball games here? Anybody? Okay, if you come this weekend, there is no heckling the referees. Okay, let me put that out there because I will be one of them. But I've had a chance to meet people standing on the sideline refereeing basketball. My customers are people, hey, aren't you the coffee guy? I have one lady, a customer of ours, their daughter, I don't have a name. I'm just the coffee guy. That's okay. They buy coffee from me, great. I can be the coffee guy, right? But it's really fun, and I've had a chance to meet some really unique people. I have 2 ladies who are in their 70s now, and over the course of the time they've been my customers, both of their husbands have passed away. And they still buy coffee from me, and we still, and those are the customers you make extra time for. When you come to their house, and you're chatting with them, and that's the beauty of the delivery system. I'm not standing behind a counter with a lineup of 20 people going, okay, next, right? You can take the time to get to know your customers, right? And for me, that's the beauty of it, and one of the reasons why I have been fighting tooth and nail with my wife and other people to not put the business on the internet. Now, I know what the value of the internet is. I understand it, don't get me wrong. But I would rather have someone phone me and say, here's what I'm looking for in my coffee. Can you do this? Sure, I can. Whereas they order off the internet and they phone me and go, that's not what I was looking for. Well, I could probably have found you what you were looking for if we were able to speak right off the get-go. And so I'm fighting the internet thing. I use the internet to order coffee and to order supplies and things like that. I get the value in it. But for me, it's all about the personal service. Okay, the face-to-face talking and the face-to-face interaction with my customers. Now, we are on Twitter. We do use Twitter a little bit to promote our coffee and things that are going on. And it's interesting what happens on Twitter when you say something about, I just got a bag of Colombian in, where that conversation on Twitter goes, because usually it's, well, is there anything stuffed in it? Is there any straws with it? Is it the right color? So you gotta, Twitter is one of those ones, and I try not to get into those conversations too much, but it is a lot of fun. And it has worked out very, very well for us, because I now have customers who can order, and they know exactly what they want, and they can find me on Twitter, and they order through Twitter. So that's worked pretty well for us. And we can promote the business. We have the big Christmas markets this weekend. I've been all over Twitter with it in terms of promoting the coffee and some of the things that my kids have done. But for me, it's just been fun. Like, this is a fun business. And the steps and progressions through it, like if you come up with an idea that you want to do and it's no fun and you hate it from the get-go, it's not going to do very well, because you have to have personal investment and time into it in order for it to be successful. All right. As we've grown, this is my 9-ounce hot top roaster, and roasting creates oils. It makes things very sticky. Coffee produces a thing called chaff, and the lenses get dirty. I didn't clean this for this picture on purpose, because that's just the nature of what we do. And this is the roaster I'm currently using now. It's called a solar roaster. This pipe vents right out the front of my house. So if you drive by on a morning and you see smoke billowing out of some guy's house, don't call the fire department. Stop and smell it. Because if it doesn't smell like something's burning, it's probably my coffee roasting. All right? I've had people knock. We've been coming up on 7 years, and in the last 6 months, I've had more people knock on my door from the smoke than in the whole other 5.5 years combined. I haven't quite figured it out. We did have a house down the street burned down. Might have been part of it. But when you drive by and you can see the smoke coming out, you can smell it. If you've ever been downtown when they're roasting at the roastery, it's an incredible smell. And some people love the smell and can't drink the coffee, and some people hate the smell but love the coffee, and some people love both. Sadly, some people hate both. Not much I can do about it. All right? But this is the roaster, and this will give you an idea of the perspective of the two roasters, the difference in size. Both of them are commercial steel, but the one is obviously much bigger. And that's where we are now. All right? That's where we're at because it's an electric roaster, and it allows me to produce about 3.5 pounds of finished coffee per batch. So when customers phone an order, we roast a full batch, and I like to have a little bit left over. We drink it at my house, or people call and need coffee on short notice. We have it available. So, you know, it's one of those things where we've grown, but it's been a ton of fun, and you really have to enjoy it. All right? Next question. Anyone know what the most expensive coffee in the world is? Well, Starbucks, yeah. Okay, by the roasted pound, if you were to buy a pound of this coffee, anyone know what the most expensive is? If you've seen the bucket list, okay, does anyone know who the story about the bucket list? Does anyone remember what it's called? Does anyone know the story about that coffee? Yeah, actually, that's perfect. I got two I can. Okay, there's one for you. Because it does have to do with, unfortunately or fortunately, animals, and they're called the civet cat. It's an Indonesian coffee. It goes for about $300 a roasted pound. And this is it. Why? Because it's a very, very limited. Well, there's only so many cats that can eat so much coffee to poop it out to harvest the beans. So the civet cat, coffee grows as a cherry. It's actually a fruit. It's not a vegetable or anything else like that. It's a fruit. And when it ripens, it's a bright red cherry. These cats run around and they climb through the trees and they eat only the ripe cherries. They're very smart. All right? And then they run around, and when you eat too much, well, you got to crap it out somewhere. So then they have people who run around and they pick it up and they wash it, obviously, right? And they harvest this coffee. And actually what they've done now is they send pickers out and they harvest the coffee from the trees. They put it into baskets and they put them in an enclosure, and the cats all run in during the night. They're nocturnal. They close the door, they feed the cats, and then they leave them there, and they wait. And when the cats are done, they let them go, and they collect all of the product. But there's only a limited supply of this coffee. Now, this was brought in for a special project that I'm involved with an orphanage in Malawi. We sold this for $50 a cup, because you can buy it for that in Calgary. And we used the money that we did it with as a fundraiser. And I'll be frankly honest with you. It smells like crap out of the bag. It roasts like crap in my roaster. It is incredibly good tasting coffee. It is unbelievable how rich and heavy this coffee is. If I could drink this every day, well, I probably could. I would. It's that good. Out of a cat's butt. All right? But it is the rarest coffee that is available in the world right now, and again, limited supply. Okay. Does anyone know the top 3 producing countries in the world? Any guesses? Colombia. Nope. So I'll tell you why she said Colombia. No? Someone said it back there. Brazil. Yes. I'll see if I can. Oh. Okay. Does anyone know what the second biggest producer is? See, this is why coffee is so much fun, because there's a huge, long history behind it. So number 2 is Vietnam, and number 3 is Colombia. All right. India is 5, I believe. So the reason Colombia, how come Colombia? Why everything Colombian?
Because that's what everybody thinks of when they think of coffee.
And why is that?
I don't know, society.
Who's the guy in his donkey?
Oh yeah, Juan Valdez.
Ah, Juan Valdez and his donkey. Juan Valdez and his donkey were the downfall in the coffee market, unfortunately. Although they're bringing him back, and he's in New York City, if you follow the coffee news at all, they've had a guy and his donkey, and they load him on an elevator, and they take him to different floors of businesses, and they promote coffee with him. Juan Valdez was the breakdown in the system because he was all about instant, mass-produced, cheap, loaded with additives and preservatives coffee. Okay? Whereas now the market is starting to swing a little bit more. Okay? We were talking about when I was in college and university driving a beater around the campus. Not many kids drive a beater anymore. Okay? Just like not many people drink instant coffee anymore, your grandparents might still. Okay? The pendulum is swinging, and I'm going to put Starbucks in the middle just because it's a safe place to put them without going off on a serious tangent about Starbucks and their coffee. But the market is also swinging more towards what I do and what the roastery does downtown and what Creekside Roasting does here in town. Fresh roasted, top quality products. Purchased not in volumes of 7,000 or 8,000 bags at a time at pennies on the pound by the people growing it, but purchased as fair trade specialty coffees that get the growers $2 or $3 per pound so they can provide subsistence to their family. That's where the market for coffee is slowly getting back to. That's where it existed in the 60s. All right? Coffee was still not that expensive, and as a commodity right now, in the last year I've seen my prices go up over 150% per pound. And it is, most people would say, as a commodity that people grow for a living, is still highly undervalued. All right? Still highly undervalued. But that's a little bit about coffee. One of the other things I discovered when we were going along with the business was we knew it was working when I got cornered by a guy one morning, and he said, "Don't you ever let us run out of your coffee again." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because for the last 2 mornings, I have had to drink something out of a jar or a container. I don't even know what it is. But when I took the first sip yesterday morning, I almost spit it out." I said, I asked my wife if this was yours, and she said no. He could tell the difference right away. Right? So that was, we knew it was working. We knew it was something we were onto, and it was something that we could promote as a product that people loved. And if you're not a coffee drinker, that's okay. All right? You don't have to be a coffee or a tea or a pop drinker to appreciate the value in a business. All right? But you have to really understand that if you're going to come up with an idea, you have to have buy-in. Like if I wasn't a coffee drinker, this would be a tough thing for me to sell. All right? At the farmers market during the summer, we have our table set up, and I love the interaction with people. I love the people who have their cup of Starbucks, and they hold it out like this when they're walking. And I don't know why. Like, it's just Starbucks, really. The guys, people with Tim Hortons, it's a little more concealed. All right? And the guys who buy it at the gas station, they generally hug it up to their side. Okay? And the Starbucks and Tim Hortons people, we do samples, and I tell them, and usually it's ladies, not to be gender specific, but it's usually the ladies walking around because you see more women at the farmers market. And my comment is they stop at my table and I go, "Ladies, I'd pour you a sample, but I'd hate to see you throw your $4.50 macchiato in the garbage." Right? Because I think our product is that much better. And if you look on the Starbucks bags, if you want to talk about dating stuff, coffee remains at its peak freshness for 3 to 4 weeks, which is why we fresh roast and deliver to your door. We want you to use it. If you look on a Starbucks bag, it's dated. And what's today? November the 18th? If it said best before December 31st, count back 6 months. That's when that coffee was roasted. Starbucks dates ahead 6 months on their coffee. Okay, most people, how many people here knew that coffee maintains its peak freshness for 3 to 4 weeks? A few of you, right? So why then would you buy 5-month-old coffee? Tim Hortons doesn't even date theirs. Okay, and I have a good friend who has a vested interest in their life in Tim Hortons. Okay, but I know that their coffee is roasted somewhere and ground somewhere and shipped here, and you have no idea what it's about. All right? If you ask me about the coffees on my table at the farmer's market, most of them I could probably tell you the crop year. Okay? I'd pass around this bag of Kopi Luwak, but I don't want to lose it. Okay? But 2011 crop. That's this year in March. Like, really, it doesn't get much fresher than that, and it's not even roasted. And this will keep for years. I could keep this in this bag. Actually, I would put it in a breathable bag. And it will keep for 10, 15, 20 years. Green coffee never goes bad. It's the beauty of it. All right, and here's a couple. I'm going to send these around. So this is what green coffee looks like. This is how I receive it before I put it in my roaster. Roasting is the one single most, and the decaf is darker because it gets butchered in the decaffeination process. All right, but some people like to drink decaf. You can smell it. It won't really smell like much. Some fresher coffees are a little more aromatic. It's just kind of a stale green smell, if green has a smell. Okay? So one of my goals now with the business is to continue to do things like this. Talk about, the success of our business, but also to educate people about coffee. All right? A few of my customers have said I don't drink coffee anymore because it gives me the jitters. I get the jitters when I drink Starbucks coffee, but I have people who phone me and say, hey, let's meet at Starbucks for coffee, and I go, okay, fine. I'll go and have a cup of coffee. And it does. And I'm not a scientist, I haven't done any breakdowns, but what I think it is it's the additives and preservatives that affect people more than the caffeine. Because people drink decaf from Starbucks and they still get the jitters. So if it's not the caffeine, it must be something else. So then I go, it could be the sugar too. Maybe the heavy cream, maybe. Although that's more clogging your arteries, so that should slow you down. All right? But what I tell people when they say I don't drink coffee because I get this happen, well, try my decaf. Try our decaf. 100% decaf. What's in that jar goes in my roaster, goes in the bag, goes to your door. Try it. And they phone a couple weeks later and go, I'll take a pound. Perfect. All right? Yes, I'll say it because you're all thinking it. Coffee is a drug. Some of us need it every day. And I'm now your pusher. Okay, I am now your supplier. And I have fun with it, and I love it. All right, every day. And my kids are getting into it. All right, and so one of my goals now is I have to keep my current customers happy, and I also have to still try to draw new customers because you always want your business base to grow. And you keep your current customers happy by bringing in stuff like Kopi Luwak. Not that many of my customers are going to pay $300 a pound for a pound of coffee. All right? You bring in something else. This is the second rarest coffee in the world from a place called Reunion Island. Again, we bring these in as part of projects that we do where people can come and have one cup as a fundraiser for $50. We'll have other coffees later on and some dessert. But if you love coffee, people are willing to try things that are like this. Okay, the bag of Cuba that made its way around is one that we brought in and have marketed to my current customers because it's unique and it's different. It's a different coffee. I have a small bag of coffee from the Galapagos Islands. I just roasted my last batch of Hawaiian Kona. Oh, some people's eyes lighting up. It'll be available this weekend at the farmer's market. And whereas coffee normally sells, our coffees run between 14 and 17 a pound. Kona is 20 for a half pound. All right? Just like when you buy real gold, it's $1,500 an ounce. And when you buy something that's gold-plated, it's $90. All right? You get better quality stuff if you want to pay a little bit more. So that's what I've done. That's how we've made the business work in terms of keeping our customers happy that we currently have and also offering something that's new and unique for our other customers. All right? And the farmer's market is a tremendous opportunity for me to be able to be sort of, that's my storefront. If you come to the farmer's market on Saturday morning, we'll have our 10 or 12 different countries that we carry, and we can talk coffee because I love to talk about coffee. I could spend all afternoon telling you about coffee because it's a world that most people don't know about and are unfamiliar with, but I love it. I love drinking it. I got a nice espresso machine from my wife for my significant year birthday a couple of years ago. And she said, do you want an espresso machine or a two-seater hot rod? And the first thing I said was an espresso machine. I wasn't thinking. I didn't know a two-seater was an option at that point. But my response was, I'll take the espresso machine because I love coffee. All right? And so we've been able to grow our business where I have over 150 regular customers. We offer a subscription program where you can pay for 6, 9, or 12 bags. Pick your delivery date. It arrives at your doorstep, not as early as your newspaper, but sometime on a Wednesday or a Thursday every week or every 2 weeks. All right? So we found ways to market the business that are outside the other, the regular realms of what we would normally do. All right? The last sort of thing we encountered was, yes? I'd have to reveal what my price per pound is buying green. Coffee runs anywhere between $2 and $5 a pound green. And again, when you have a good accountant, you find ways that your vehicle, even though they don't like classifying it as a delivery vehicle, your vehicle insurance, your mileage, your maintenance, your gas, all becomes a tax write-off. So that's helpful. And what you try to do is, for me, is I try to get to do 3 or 4 deliveries on a 1-1 run. Right? So I'll go and map my day out and plan it. So, and the last thing that happened was a couple of years ago, we were nominated for the Chamber of Commerce Awards for the Customer Service Award. And we saw the list of people. There were 15 or 16 other businesses in our category. And I sat with my wife and I just laughed. I said, like, we buy from them and they're awesome and them. And we're sitting there and I'm thinking, oh, this is great. We had a nice dinner. And then the winner is Being There Roasting Company. And I looked at my wife and I go, I didn't write anything down. Right? So you got to walk up and you talk a little bit. And so we were recognized as a business that cared about customer service. Okay? Because we had invested in it and made it happen. And so that was one of the, the last sort of thing that for us has made it a thing that we want to keep doing. Because, recognition is one thing, but we took a tremendous amount of pride in having that award sitting above my espresso machine in our house. And so that's worked out very, very well for us. All right. I got to find my questions. Where did they all go? Oh, what has more caffeine, espresso or regular roast?
Espresso.
Ha! So for all of you who drink espresso, to get a buzz, it actually, provided it's a dark roast, which most espresso is, or a French roast, it actually has less caffeine. All right. I get my last one. Does anyone remember how long we've been in business?
7 years.
Oh, there's one. You both said it at the same time.
That's right.
Yeah, 7 years. All right. Questions, quickly. Anyone? Actually, you know what? It's okay.
If you're only charging $14 to $17 a pound,
Yep.
even at $5 per pound bringing it in,
Mhm.
it's only giving you $10. With the amount of time being self-employed, you're not even making your basic $10 an hour by the time you get your delivery and stuff. Don't you, in the long run, go, "Why am I doing this?" when it comes out at the end?
Yes and no. Again, it comes down to really enjoying what I'm doing. And for us, and in our one, our unique family system, our goal was to have a parent working at home.
Yeah.
Now, I realize there's other things you could do at home that you could probably make more money at.
Yeah.
But for me, it's grown into a passion and a love, right? Like, I get to drink a $300 a pound coffee every once in a while. Like, really. And yeah, there's
definitely some perks.
yeah, there's some perks, and in terms of growing a home-based business, yeah, that might be a consideration for people. My wife works full-time, so that's the other side of the equation. I've had to take a couple of loans from her, but we've been able to pay them back, and our goal has been to support the 2 guys I talked about at the start in Africa, to be able to send them regular support in Africa, and we've been able to do that. We've accomplished that as a goal. That was one of our main primary goals. And the other one was that at some point the business would become self-sufficient. Other than a couple of outstanding debts that my wife reminds me of that still need to be paid back, we're almost there. We functioned, before we bought this new roaster, the red one, we had no debt in the business. We had paid everything off. And the new roaster was an unexpected expense, but we had accumulated some capital and we were able to take a small family loan to top it up and bring in the new roaster. So yeah, that for some people that certainly is one of those, you know, a question, why would you do it?
It was sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a great question because it's a reality for people who are looking for something else for that sort of idea.
I have a business that's a hobby and it makes absolutely nothing. And my husband always says, "Aren't you ever going to make money?" So
Yeah.
that was why I was like kind of.
Well, and considering the volume of coffee we drink in my house,
Yeah,
if I had to go, even buying a pound at a time, I would put a serious dent in my finances. So this is a great way for me to get my fix, you know, be my own supplier.
You pay your children for their labor?
A little bit here and there. Usually they come with me to the farmer's market and help me set up. And so they make $5 or $10 doing that. But my 12-year-old could probably stand up here and do almost the same presentation about talking about coffee, not the business side, but he knows, like, people come and ask him, "I'm looking for your strongest coffee." And his first question is, medium or dark roast? I go, what 12-year-old thinks of that as a first question for coffee? Because he knows dark roast is stronger. But if you want medium, he also knows that Papua New Guinea and Sumatra are our two strongest mediums. And that Ethiopian, like his dad, is his favorite, which is always a good thing to help sell coffee at the farmer's market. Tell people your favorite, and they buy it. Boom. Or your best seller. And Ethiopian's not our best seller, but another African is. And he knows all that. So they're growing, and I'm hoping that they'll continue to be interested in it. They actually have produced some stuff for the farmers market this weekend. Paper mache piggy banks was their business venture. And so, yeah, it's been great to watch them, and they've sort of caught the bug.
So you have handouts that allow us to contact you so we can get some.
You know what? I don't. I am getting ready for this weekend, and my roaster yesterday, I blew an element on it. And so from 2 o'clock on, when I was supposed to be doing all that, I spent on the phone arranging to get my business back on, because I can't roast right now. Like, I can't roast anything. Luckily, all my stuff for the weekend is done. The samples were done before the roaster kicked out. So that was my goal. If you have a bag of coffee, there is a phone number on there.
I'll just beat up Sasha for hers.
And
Empty bag.
the other one, if you are on Twitter, our Twitter handle is Roasted Fresh with the number 4U is our Twitter handle. We didn't do the business name on Twitter, but it's Roasted Fresh for you. And I can't guarantee you that what you might read will always make sense or have anything to do with coffee. But I really love Twitter as an internet sort of presence for us. The size will be limited depending on what roaster I have to buy next. If I can keep this roaster for the next 10 years, we can make that work and we can manage it with this size of a roaster. But the next step from here is a gas roaster, which means going off-site, which then cuts into your bottom line because you're renting a building, possibly hiring staff. So there's those elements that come into play as well, which has been the nice thing about having it at home. No rental, no staff. You know, like, I basically run the business and
School only goes till 4. You could open at 5 for your kids to work.
you could open at 5 for your kids, but they're not old enough to work yet. And one of the things that we absolutely decided when we were creating a business, we would never have a storefront. I've worked in the restaurant industry. I know the life my bosses, even when I got into management, they had staff that they were comfortable leaving behind to run the store for 2 weeks. I don't want to be in that position. And if you look out in the retail world right now, how challenging it is for people to find employees, right? That are good employees that you can trust if you wanted to go away for 2 days, let alone a week for vacation. Yeah, the storefront option is never ever been a consideration for us. So the home business has been ideal. I'm 2 minutes from the college. We live just over in Southridge. And the other part of my life is I referee basketball all winter. And so, you know, the coffee business works around that because we're flexible. And I didn't realize the value if you have, when you get older and you have kids, when there's a snow day, I'm at home. Like when the school, although the city schools don't close, all right, but if there's a snow day and things close, I'm at home. I go, okay, kids can sleep in, right? And then I have parents phoning me, hey, can my kids come over because I got to work today? Okay, there's the other benefit of a home-based business, right? My kids are sick. I'm at home with them, which may not be very much fun, but you know, you're at home for them. So there's that added benefit in terms of having a family and the other side of that. So, anything else?
Before you discovered this, were you always looking for a home-based business, kind of?
It's funny, I was talking with John just before we started. If you ask my wife, about 10 years ago, I said, man, we should start a pickup and recycling business. And I look now and I go, well, missed that one. It's like, you know, like John said, ideas are a dime a dozen. But it has always been attractive to me, and especially because we decided that we wanted one parent to stay at home with the kids.
So it was just finding the right idea.
Mm-hmm.
It worked.
Yeah. Took a trip to Africa to come up with it, but ideas are grown in a variety of different places. So, but if you have something you love and you're passionate about, and you can learn and grow with it as you move along, you know, I think it's a great opportunity to be able to be, you know, self-employed with the benefits that go along with that. And while I don't have benefits that go along with what I do, you know, there are other extrinsic benefits beside the financial side that we can't replace. And I've discovered as a small business owner, there is no better way to create cash flow in your business than to phone your customers and tell them you're going away on holidays for 3 weeks. Because if they run out, they're not very happy, so they stock up. Which means good cash flow heading into the holiday season. All right? And, you know, like I joke about that, but my customers go, yeah, you're right. Like I need 3 pounds. I need 5 pounds. I need 10 pounds. I go, 3 weeks, like 10 pounds? Yeah, 10 pounds. And that's where our customers have gotten to. And the science department here now orders coffee from us. So if you can sneak in and steal coffee from them, I don't know if it's, you know, but they get about, well, this time they ordered 15 pounds, 3 5-pound bags, last them about a month, and then they'll phone me again and right to the office. Drop it on the secretary's desk. It's always a good day for the secretaries when coffee arrives because it smells great. And it makes them very happy. And then they make the staff happy. So I'm waiting for John to start ordering 5 pounds at a time for his department. No pressure.
I have to speak. Thanks, Brian, for coming to talk to us. I just wanted to just summarize in real quickly. I love to read, since I started this job in the Entrepreneur Development Center, I love reading corporate histories. So I go to Ben & Jerry's website or whatever, pick a company and read the About section of the company. And every single one of them, I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, they're exactly like Brian here. Pick Starbucks, Ben & Jerry's ice cream, Facebook. So, you know, we think about entrepreneurship and starting companies as that, but really it's this. And thank you, Brian, for coming and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me. It was great.